Dr. Srinivas sir, and all to talk, give me this opportunity to speak in front of you guests. Let us see how airway management in ICU is different from the routine airway management, which happens usually in the operation theater. My talk is more towards critical care rather than in the OT. Hello. So airway management is a very important skill to acquire because it is a fundamental aspect of any critical care unit. So any experienced EMS provider will tell you that the three most important considerations are airway, airway, and airway. So once you secure the airway, your A, B, C kind of approach, even in the advanced trauma life support protocol, ABCD starts with airway. So securing the airway is the most important aspect of managing a critically ill patient. So how is intubation in OT different from intubation outside the operation theater? Anybody? So in OT, everything is planned in advance. They do pre-anesthesia checkup. They anticipate the airway. They do all the subjective assessment. And if anything goes wrong, if they are not able to secure the airway, they can always awake the patient and keep ventilating the patient manually till the patient is awake. They can regroup. They can even take a break and come back and decide regarding the procedure. But in emergency conditions and in ICUs, where we cannot secure an airway, it will be a lot of confusion and a lot of dilemma. So inside the OT, it is usually done by skilled anesthetists who day in and day out do the procedure, and they are very well skilled. And outside the OT, the varying skill levels, because starting from a junior doctor to the respiratory therapist, anybody might be facing the situation of securing the airway. And in OTs, their intubations are elective and patients are well prepared. That is, the patient is prepared well because they have good physiological reserve, like you can see here, because patients are stable and selected electively for the procedures. But in the ICUs and in the ERs, where the patient, we do not have any time for preparation, and we may not have any time for evaluation of the patient for his preparedness for securing the airway. And the patients are usually unstable and with no physiological reserve. Okay, we'll come to this point later. And you cannot wake up the patient once the patient is critically ill patient because the airway, securing the airway is the utmost importance. And the environment is usually suboptimal outside the operation theaters. So what are the factors? What makes it difficult to secure an airway outside the operation theater? Patient-related factors, the staff-related, the instruments, and the conditions. The conditions outside the OT are not appropriate for the emergency intubations or crash intubations, which we call. So the patient-related factors are especially the patient like females and infants whose airway, the larynx is shorter, they have micrognathia, where securing the airway may be little difficult. So when the patient has difficult airway, the patient are more prone to hypoxia, and chance of difficult airway increases exponentially. And staff related, outside the OT, the staff in the ICU or other areas may not be well versed with the techniques of intubation and management of the airway. And coming to the instruments, you may not be having, you will always want to have a variety of options for your intubation instruments, like your laryngoscope. All the types of different sizes and different fitments should be readily available. They may not be available. And the optimal size of the endotracheal tube, anticipated optimal size, and 2 sizes below it should be readily available to secure the airway in emergency conditions, which may not be available outside the operation theaters. So the scenario is different. How? Varying degree of acute hypoxia. The patient will not have natural physiological reserves, which we usually have when we go electively intubating the patient. The patient may be hemodynamically unstable on many vasopressor supports and may just have arrived from the outside scene to the ER, where the patient is hemodynamically unstable. So even the patient may not be having an IV line at this point of time. So they do not tolerate delay in the establishing the airway. They tolerate that very poorly. And the patient may be having any myocardial ischemia or upper GI bleeding. The patient may be profusely vomiting the blood. And such conditions make it very challenging for us to identify the right structures to put an endotracheal tube through the vocal cords. So our patients in the ICU outside the operation theater are usually immobilized, they are traumatized, and they are compromised in other systems also, like cardiovascular system, and the patient may be having raised ICP, post-polytrauma. So the airway, by the time we want to secure, maybe somebody else would have tried to intubate. So you can see the epiglottis is all edematous and erythematous, where you can see only part of the vocal cord visualized. This is probably Mallampati grade 3. You can see that epiglottis is severed because of multiple attempts at intubating and securing the airway. And here you can see the right vocal cord is severely damaged, it's edematous and also and swollen. So how the scenario is difficult, we may not have any time to evaluate the clinical condition of the patient. We might have to secure the airway as soon as possible in order to save life. So the conditions are not ideal in the ICU when you are going for a crash intubation. And the instruments may not be working properly. You may not have all the fittings ready, all the attachments and different types of laryngoscope fittings numbers ready. And the surrounding people may not be well skilled to assist you in intubating the patient. So there has been a study done in 297 tracheal intubations. This was a prospective investigation done in 95, where they have seen that difficult securing airway was difficult in almost 8% of the patients, and esophageal intubation was done almost 8%, that is 25 patients, and almost 3%, that is 7 people, died during the first 30 minutes of the procedure. Okay, and even the procedure was successful, tracheal aspiration was seen in almost 4% of the intubation of the patient, that is 12 patients. So securing an airway outside the operation theatre, that is to management critically ill, was quite challenging, and you cannot clearly assess which patients the airway is going to be difficult. So airway management is really easy unless you face a difficult intubation scenario. So the answer here is you should not panic first of all and try to follow the difficult. This is our success plan. Okay, the assessment has already been dealt with in the previous speech. Let us go ahead with the 3 P's, the preparation, the positioning and the pre-oxygenation. So the rest of the things will be discussed in the forthcoming presentations. So this is the mnemonic for the preparation. Why bag people? This is Yankur suction. This is a kind of suction apparatus. You should be kept ready to aspirate any secretions in the oral cavity. You should have a bag and mask valve ready. You should immediately secure an IV access and try to get the help as soon as possible. And positioning of patient is quite important. This will be shown in the forthcoming slides. And the right endotracheal tube selection, like it was discussed in the radiology sonology class, right endotracheal tube should be kept ready. At least a couple of sizes below the anticipated right size should be ready. And you should always check the cuff of the endotracheal tube before any procedure. So keep the oxygen ready, and all the drugs required, all this induction agents, neuromuscular blockers, and all the adjunct medication should be kept ready. The laryngoscope with variety, ensure a variety and that they are working. This should be ensured, and then we evaluate for a difficult airway using that Lemon criteria and Mallampati scores. That is 3 finger breadth distance between the thyromental distance and interincisor distance of at least 2 finger breadths. That will correlate to around 3 centimeters. And make sure there is no neck immobilization. In polytrauma patients, we usually put cervical collar, so intubating at the head extension may not be possible. And another patient is in the old age also, the cervical spine may be spinous and this sclerosed, and it will be very tough. And in patients like chronic patients of rheumatoid arthritis, they are known prone to atlantoaxial dislocation, so we should be more cautious. So these two are good situations where you can anticipate an easy airway, that is all right, and anticipate a difficult airway also, you will be well prepared. But an unanticipated difficult airway is a tough scenario which will be dealt in the forthcoming presentations. So what do we do now? We should always be prepared for the crash landing. That is, not only the airway security is important, that we should also assess the general and hemodynamic condition of the patient before securing the airway. So how do you ensure for crash landing is, you should know which patients are going more prone to. Okay, this is the Montpellier ICU intubation algorithm, which helps predict this is a bundle to limit the complications related to intubation. This is again divided into pre-intubation, per-intubation and post-intubation bundle. As you can see, for patients who are not only securing airway, hemodynamic stability is also important. So at least presence of 2 operators is what is recommended by this Montpellier algorithm bundle. And fluid bolus of at least 500 ml before starting the procedure should be started, and in the absence of any cardiogenic edema. And preparation of long-term sedation should be prepared, and that will be started after post-intubation. So pre-oxygenate for at least 3 minutes with NIV. This is another indication. This has been future, I'll quote some other studies which support use of NIV for pre-oxygenation of the patients. So per intubation, that is during the intubation, we always prefer rapid sequence intubation, which we give etomidate, succinylcholine or rocuronium in the prescribed doses, and we also use the Celix maneuver. This is mild pressure on the trachea, which will nicely orient the airway structures so that laryngeal structures are well visualized. And post intubation, immediate confirmation of the place by capnography. Capnography is what we use as gold standard to confirm the placement of endotracheal tube in the trachea. And if the diastolic BP is less than 35 after intubation, you immediately start inotrope support, vasopressor supports, and initiate the long-term sedation which you have prepared previously. And initiate the protective ventilation, that is tidal volume of at least 6 to 8 ml per minute, a PEEP of 5, and breathing rate of at least 10 to 20 cycles per minute is set. And recruitment maneuvers, if at all required, will be started, and maintain the intubation cuff pressure 25 to 30 centimeters of water. So more than 30 centimeters of cuff pressure will cause damage to the tracheal structures and necrosis in that is a late complication of the intubation. So this is the ideal position which we want. This is the sniffing. This is called sniffing position or the McGill's position. There is mild head end elevation and placement of little elevation below the occiput of the head. This can be done in the normal patients where the patients are non-obese. For patients who are obese, we always want a long stack. This is called the ramp position. This is a ready-made ramp which we are seeing, where the patient in this particular position, the chance of securing the airway is less than 30% because the patient is morbidly obese. So what we are trying to achieve is we are trying to elevate the upper thoracic area with the help of supports so that the tragus of the ear is in the line with the suprasternal notch. So this will help us nicely align the structures in one line to secure the proper vision to intubate the patient. This is called the ramp position. It is done in the morbidly obese people. Yeah. So Ballet et al. Is one study where they studied the pre-oxygenation of the patient. That is another P in the preparation of the patient. Non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, that is use of BiPAP or NIV, versus standard ventilation with the bag and mask, where mean saturation levels of 98% was achieved with the non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, while only 93% saturation was achieved with the standard ventilation. And during intubation, the patient, obviously you disconnect the ventilation, so the patient desaturated to only 93% because we started the intubation at around 98%, but these patients are desaturated to up to 81%. So they recommend using of non-invasive positive pressure ventilation in patients before you're trying to intubate the patient. So in cooperative patients, at least 8 breaths for 60 seconds of pre-oxygenation is recommended, and in sick and uncooperative and sick patients, which we usually deal in our ICUs, pre-oxygenation for at least 3 minutes is recommended, which is also the recommendation in the Montpellier algorithm previously. So the take-home message is, this is very important, maintaining and securing the airway patency is the primary goal. It's a challenge but not impossible if you know the right techniques. So you should always have your backup procedure. What if this fails? This will be dealt in the next presentation. Know both old and new methods and choose backup based on the skills. So difficult airway or ventilation can occur at any time. You should always be ready. Always anticipate difficult airway even in normal patients. Thank you.